All right, we are live. Welcome to the Gunner Technology Livestream, a weekly tech talk for non-techies and techies alike. I'm your host, Terry Merkins. With me is CEO of Gunner Technology, Cody Swan. What's going on, Cody?
Not much. My lighting's terrible because it's nighttime where I am, so I don't have the natural
Oh,
light.
that's right.
Usually,
Yeah.
it's usually
Yeah,
gray
getting a bit of a
from
late
behind
start
kind here. Yeah.
because you were caught in like a massive Florida thunderstorm,
Oh
I
my
guess.
gosh. This was, hurricane quality. Flooding was
No
rampant.
way.
I couldn't even get home. I had to get a ride home because I couldn't take the motorcycle. And I will ride through just about anything, but I couldn't get through this.
Oh my gosh. So that previews two topics that I want to discuss today, which is motorcycles and thunderstorms. But we'll get to that. You'll understand where I'm going with that later on in the episode. But first, we can dive right into the Country Shore giveaway. Country Shore is a lifestyle brand for anyone who loves the outdoors. You can visit them at countryshoreoutfitters.com. The winner of the Country Shore giveaway is Michael S. from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Speaking of really bad weather, they get like crazy tornadoes there.
Yeah.
But hopefully you're not getting any of those right now, Michael. We'll send you a hat and copies of our ebooks. And anyone who didn't win this week can sign up on our Facebook page. And while you're on our Facebook page, answer our question of the week, which is past week. What did we talk about last week?
It was
cryptocurrency. Have you ever bought cryptocurrency? And for the most part, people that hadn't. I guess not a lot of crypto buyers, which is good for them. Good for you guys for not buying into the hype.
Yeah, right. Yep, that's right.
We had, we gave it a go back in the days before it completely went out of control.
Yeah, we did just fine. We did just fine. I think we bought at like 100 and sold at 700 or something like that.
Yeah. It's pretty good.
Yeah. So that's just fine. I'm very pleased with that.
It's better than buying at 19,000 and selling at 6,000.
Oh my gosh.
The question of the week this week is actually for next week's episode. Like I talked about last week, we're going to sort of like preview next week's episode with the question of the week. So this week's question is, what are the robots to take care of elderly people? Yeah. I'm pulling up a poll right now because I can't remember what the name is.
You actually cut out for a second. I didn't actually hear what you said, or maybe I cut out. I don't know.
Oh yeah. I was cutting out last episode too, but companion robots is what they're called. Companion robots for the elderly, yay or nay. And this is basically, I don't know if you've seen the news or read about it, but I guess they're elderly people are so lonely nowadays that they give them like these robot seals in Japan to like take care of and comfort them and stuff. And apparently it does wonders for their mental health. So yay or nay, like I guess it's like a technological solution to
I can do you one better, man. One of my girlfriend's friends just got her mom one of these care cats, the companion pet cat.
Okay.
Totally just got it for her, and she absolutely loves it. She wanted a dog, and my girlfriend's friend was like, "You can't even take care of yourself. I'm not buying you a dog." And so for I think it was like her birthday or Christmas, she got her one of these animatronic cats, and her mom was like, "This is ridiculous. I'm not using this thing." And then like a week later, she loved the thing.
Oh my gosh.
And whenever she calls her
in the pudding.
Whenever she calls her mom, you can hear it in the background, like, "Meow."
Oh my god, it's amazing.
I mean, yeah, it kind of is. It's like those Tamagotchis, but
like, I was just gonna say, look how far we've come from the Tamagotchi to the artificial cat, the Android cat. I remember those Tamagotchis were so high maintenance. You had to feed them all the time.
Oh yeah, awful.
They were so temperamental too.
Awful. Not like real people where you can just like kind of forget about them.
It's the best. So hop on our Facebook page and answer that question of the week. But we can go ahead and dive right into this week's episode. I'm excited for this week's episode because it's kind of futuristic. It's kind of sci-fi. A lot of the topics that we're talking about, a lot of it's hypothetical, but most of it is only a matter of time. Practically all of it's only a matter of time before these technologies come out, and a lot of them already have. So this week we're talking about hardware and the ethics around a lot of the hardware that's out there nowadays, or rapidly being developed. So the first one that I wanted to talk about, just to sort of start off, I was gonna say start off the bang. That's a horrible pun, but 3D printed guns. So you're a big gun guy. So you own a couple guns, and I guess what are your feelings on 3D printed guns?
I mean, so one thing I am is practical, if nothing else. And so one thing, so you can, there's a little bit of a difference. You can 3D print most of the firearm, but you still need to CNC. It's called the lower third, which also is very easy to do because you need that actual firing pin, which can't be plastic kind of thing. Um, it's a technicality. It's very easy to do, and they sell the Ghost machines for very cheap. It's called a Ghost Gunner machine. You can get one for like $1,000, which you can do it on any CNC machine, but they come with the plans preloaded. So all you have to do is basically hit go, and it'll give you that lower third to complete your firearm. All that's to say is, people don't realize this, but you don't have to register a gun you make yourself.
Yeah.
And so right now, if I like read a book on gunsmithing, can go out and make a gun. The thing that 3D printing and these preloaded CNC machines do is make it very easy for anyone to create a gun. And I mean, I've always been kind of sort of like, make the punishment fits the crime kind of thing. And I don't have a good answer for like stopping it. And I'm also not like a open-ended Second Amendment guy. So like you have these people who think kind of the Second Amendment has no restrictions. Like, hey, if you can get a hold of a howitzer tank, more power to you. Like you can't take that away from me. Can I get a hold of a nuclear bomb? Well, good. That's awesome because they can't take that away from you. There's some like absolutists. That's not me at all. Like I believe that there's kind of a line there, and I believe that the Second Amendment needs to have a relook, if you will, because of things like this. That said, I always think kind of like the deterrent, or not even deterrent, but the best thing we can do against gun violence is have extremely harsh penalties for if you commit a crime with a firearm. So like maybe it would be cool if we remove that sort of kind of law where if you make a gun, you don't have to register it. Like if you make a gun, you have to register it, right? I'm okay with that. That doesn't hurt my Second Amendment rights at all. If you make a gun, you have to register it. And if you don't register a firearm and are caught with an unregistered firearm, you get like 10 years in the clink. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's what I think we have to do, because we're not going to stop people from making them. So let them make them, but let them register them so we know who has them, kind of thing.
And just a coincidence, the guy's name is Cody, who came up with like the 3D printed gun stuff. Cody Wilson.
From Texas.
Yeah, from Texas.
That's right.
Don't mess with Texas. And he did have one inflammatory post that I came across where we talk about this all the time, but his whole thing is, if the government, he was worried that Hillary was going to get elected and was going to immediately try and take people's guns. And so he said, if she tries to do that, I'm going to call all the militia down here. We're going to like arm ourselves with a bunch of 3D printed guns and just go to town. And it's like, you would be obliterated in 15 minutes. Right. But there were I came across some interesting ideas, but I don't think necessarily entirely effective ideas to combat 3D printed guns. One is, I guess with like, and I've actually tried to do this with Adobe Photoshop. I did it for like web design project. If you try to scan like a dollar bill into Adobe Photoshop, it doesn't let you, because it recognizes that it's currency, and so it won't actually let you scan it in, which I found out the hard way. I wasn't trying to, well, I might have been trying to counterfeit some cash. But there was the idea of the 3D printer makers themselves should add logic in there to recognize when they're printing a 3D gun. I guess two difficulties there. One, it's hard to recognize when somebody's printing a gun because you can easily print the components and it doesn't necessarily look like a gun.
Right.
Two is that any software out there that's supposedly, I was gonna say bulletproof. I'm full of like terrible puns today, but that's bulletproof will immediately be hacked and jailbroken, and so you'll be able to put some open source firmware on your 3D printer that will allow you to 3D print guns. So I think that's kind of a non-starter. It's a good idea in theory, but I don't think it would actually work.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of is, because exactly there's always going to be a workaround for something like that.
One of the other things too was this gets back to like a Chris Rock bit from way back in the day, but Chris Rock had like a really good joke. I'm gonna paraphrase and murder it. This is another good pun. he basically said, like, if I was in charge, I would make guns super cheap, but I would make the bullets insanely expensive, like a couple $1,000s a bullet. Like then you're gonna cure gun crime that way. And I guess that's one way to actually do it, because 3D printing, as it stands today, relies on like super hot fusion to put the components together. You can't really use a lot of heat when you're forging a bullet. That would go wrong real fast. So maybe that's a potential solution. Just make bullets insanely expensive. But I think a lot of people would be up in arms, up in arms about that.
True, and you stopped watching Walking Dead. Maybe this was kind of early on. This is when it started to go awry for me. But there's all these survivors, obviously, and only one of them of all the survivors remembered how to, or had the knowledge of how to make bullets. So apparently, it's very rare to know how to make bullets. So maybe you really can get around that.
It's a thought. It's a thought. But yeah, I think the best idea that I read was to, and I don't know how this would fly over. You probably have a better idea than I do of how this would go over with the gun community at large. But it's you need a gun license. I guess you'd have to be to carry a gun, and you would have to register all your equipment. And basically, I think the immediate pushback would be that there's to be government oversight of gun ownership. But that to me seems like the only viable solution is making sure that anyone who has a gun, we know they have a gun, and we know that they're able to have a gun.
Yeah, and I mean that's kind of where I come down. And you have these people who say that you're basically giving the government their targets by forcing them to register their firearms. Which, by the way, again, you have to register your firearm if you purchase one from a seller, right?
And I have a question about that too, but keep going with your thought.
But if you make one, you don't have to register it. And this is how people like, well, the government's not going to know about this one. So when they come take all my other guns, I'm still going to have this one. It's this insane notion that I don't even know who is, like the UN peacekeepers or someone is going to show up at your doorstep and take all of your firearms. But if you have that one 3D printed one that's unregistered, they're not going to know about that one. And you'll be able to keep that one safe. So you would run into a big pushback against this. But you know what's interesting about all of this? What's very interesting about all of this is the fight is kind of weird because the NRA, right, the big, obviously, gun lobby in the United States, NRA, and internationally, but they're not as big internationally.
I didn't know they were international.
Oh yeah, totally. They don't have.
But they're the National Rifle Association, right?
Right. They just don't have as much clout.
I guess they couldn't call themselves the IRA because that wouldn't really go over well.
But their backing comes from, obviously big money donors, but mainly gun manufacturers. And I got to think the gun manufacturers aren't thrilled about the prospect of 3D printing guns. Mm-hmm. So I wonder how much the NRA would actually fight to protect the 3D printing, kind of having to register the 3D printing gun. Because I think the NRA would be like, okay, fine, you do have to register it to satisfy the gun manufacturers who kind of want to be on at least an even playing field with the homebrew gun makers, kind of thing.
Right. The one other question I wanted to ask is how private gun sales work, because I saw some video where somebody, I guess you don't have to do background checks with private gun sales.
Correct.
So they had some random cameraman. You can't sell it to somebody from a different state. If you're selling a gun in Nevada, they have to be a Nevada resident. But then I guess the point they were making was there's no real check. Like they just bought a gun from a guy and they got a bill of sale and stuff, but he could have used the fake ID. And the guy selling the gun has no idea who he's selling it to. So I didn't realize that's how private gun sales work.
Oh yeah, totally. And even gun shows, like if you go to a gun show, you can just buy a firearm without a background check. And that's interesting. You said out of state. In Florida, I don't think there's any restriction. Like,
is that right?
I think if you came here, I could be like, here, Derry, have one of my guns.
Yes, I'm on the way.
And again, Florida has one of the most open, Nevada too, but Florida is, I think, the most open, although we don't have open carry laws here like they do in Texas. But if a family member, like if you buy one, I'm pretty sure you're supposed to register it, right? and have like a bill of sale, like transferred and everything like that. But in Florida, pretty sure, like I'm not a lawyer, but if a family member gifts it to you or sells it to you, it can just be a vapor transaction. Nothing has to ever be written down about that at all.
Really?
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. That's crazy. You learn something new every day. So I guess any final thoughts on 3D printed guns before we move on to?
No, I know I could talk all day about this, and I know we got other stuff to kind of get to. But like I said, I think that the advent of well, actually, I'll say one other thing is that gun sales. This issue is being put on the back burner for now, and because the guns are having kind of like exactly what you said, no one's worried about their guns being taken away right now, right? Like, as a matter of fact, I just brought up this article. United Sporting Company, Remington, and Smith & Wesson all either went bankrupt or are in danger of going bankrupt in the last 3 years because everyone, after Trump stopped getting elected, or after Trump got elected, everyone stopped like hoarding firearms. There was, when Obama was president, you would walk into a gun shop and the shelves would be bare and you couldn't buy ammo. You could not, even if you had $1 million, you couldn't buy ammo because everyone was just buying everything they could.
That is wild. I do know that also there was the Cody Wilson from Texas got prosecuted by, I want to say it was California. It might have been New York, but I know the Justice Department, not only did they basically throw the case out and said, we're not going to do anything about it, print 3D guns as much as you want, but they actually paid him like 40 grand for his legal expenses. So I guess there was a bit of a sea change in terms of paranoia surrounding guns when Trump got elected.
So my point is this issue's on the back burner for now, but the minute a Democratic candidate becomes president again, we're going to be facing this right away. So, nothing's going to happen with this, with the Republican controlled country. But I think when this comes to the forefront and becomes an issue again, I think that we need to do two things. I think we honestly, I'm not talking about taking away people's guns, but I think we have to actually take a look at the Second Amendment and like actually determine what exactly it means in today's world. You know what I mean? Like adjust it for these technological advances we're having. I'm not even saying which way to adjust it. I'm just saying it needs to fit the times. And then again, I would say that we need to focus more on cracking down on people who are trying to be secretive with these ghost guns, as they're called, rather than like trying to prevent them from being made, kind of thing.
I mean, it is a really interesting time because there's so much technology coming out nowadays that completely revolutionize the debates, not necessarily like revolutionize the world in terms of their, practical usage and effectiveness in sort of the day-to-day lives of people, but it completely changes the scope of the debate. Because like, I imagine if you went back in time to 85, 86, when they're debating the eventual Constitution of 1787, is that Constitution? Do I have my dates right?
1770. No,
89 was 89. No, I want to say we'll look that up and I'll say it when Cody's talking. But if you went back and said, this is an awesome amendment, you got your head in the right place. But what if I told you that 1789? Okay, that was close. 87. I nailed it. So if you said to them, what if I told you that in the future, people could manufacture guns in their own homes? And like 3D printing technology isn't there yet, but technology always gets there. So eventually there'll be 3D printers in every home. It'll cost like a couple $100, buy a 3D printer and have the materials. So if you said anyone can make a gun in their house at any time, as many guns as they want, would you still want this to, be the Second Amendment? And I think the debate would completely change. And it really has to today too.
And it's actually weird because it would actually, if we did take an honest look at that and said, what was the intent of the Second Amendment? And the intent was to prevent from government tyranny, right? So that's what I'm saying. I don't even know which way the debate would go, because that would bring up the issue of, well, what today would prevent government?
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing to counteract it.
Right,
so
right.
That opens up a whole can of worms.
Exactly.
All right, next topic. And this gets back to my motorcycle reference. It's kind of obscure, but the next topic is
artificial wombs.
It's not yet.
Okay.
It's suicide machines. I don't know if you've heard about 3D printed suicide machines, but the second I read Suicide Machines, because I typed it out and I was like, where do I know Suicide Machine from? Because I recognize that phrase. And I thought it was a lyric from a song, and I finally tracked it down. It's from Born to Run by Bruce Springsteen.
Huh.
He talks about suicide machines, but the interesting fact is, I guess the whole song is basically about like drag racing and sort of like the freedom to run away from your current situation, and you can get out of whatever you're stuck in. But I think the real message is just that you want to get the hell out of New Jersey if you were born and raised in New Jersey. But there was an interesting thing where he says fuel injected, chrome wheeled, fuel injected, something or other.
Okay.
But fuel injection didn't come to motorcycles until 1982, and the song came out in 1973. So the song sucks, is what I'm trying to say.
Huh.
Bruce Springsteen was a phony. He didn't know anything about motorcycles.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the motorcycle that I'm riding, that I rode just now to get home, is a 2002, and it's still carbureted. It's not fuel injected.
So, get your facts right, Bruce. But suicide machines, it's a crazy, crazy thing. But there's a physician in Switzerland, and I don't have his first name, but his last name is Nitschke.
Chocolate Nitschke? Is that what
it's
it is?
Chocolate Nitschke.
Okay.
A delicious Swiss dish. But he's released plans for a 3D printed suicide machine. And what it does, it's just crazy to talk about and think about. But basically, there's like a questionnaire you have to answer to prove that you're of sound mind before the machine will activate. So I don't know what the questionnaire is. I assume he won't release that, because then you could like game the system and prepare for it, I guess.
Interesting.
But you enter your answers in, and I guess if you do it correctly, this little pod opens up. It's kind of like the pod in Alien. And you get inside, and the pod closes up, and what happens is it slowly puts liquid nitrogen into the chamber. So I guess air is like 80% nitrogen. So it adds enough nitrogen that the oxygen levels drop to like 5%. At that point, you basically just pass out, and then it just saturates it with nitrogen, and you die from apoxia, I guess it would be.
Yeah.
Where your brain doesn't get enough oxygen.
Yeah, like asphyxiation.
Somehow you die. I mean, it's not good. Yeah, it's not good to be in a chamber filled with nothing but nitrogen. And they're available. They're in use. They're out there. The plans are out there. Anyone with a 3D printer or access to one can 3D print a suicide machine. And I guess they come with like a built-in casket too. So his idea is that you should die like on your own terms and surrounded by loved ones, and then everything's sort of taken care of, and you don't have to die in a different way. And I guess the debate seems to be around the fact that suicide is still illegal in this country. I think there's only 5 or 6 states that allow it.
Yeah,
Oregon is the famous one with Dr. Kevorkian, but I don't know if this is going to shift the debate. The fact that there's going to be an easy technological solution that produces painless death for people who want it.
I mean, you can lump this right in with the 3D printed gun, because that's kind of a suicide machine too. I mean, like,
yeah, that's true. Very true.
I've never, I can't even wrap my head around why suicide is illegal, other than the fact that we used to be a Quaker society. Like, that's the only reason I can possibly come up with. I mean, I guess it's a public safety issue if you decide to hurl yourself off a building.
Yeah.
But I
or a gun. I guess a gun could misfire and hurt somebody, maybe.
Right.
But if you're alone in your room, what difference is that going to make?
Yeah, it's fascinating. By the way, side note, speaking of to tie guns and suicide together, not that I just did something I hate. Not to tie
tie together.
Tie together.
The definition of tie is
to
join things together.
Right. So anyway, but talking to a gun store owner, they would teach their employees like signs for people who are coming to their gun range to commit suicide. Like, they took a taxi to get there, they took an Uber to get there. They ask if they can buy ammunition, buy the bullet as opposed to like a pack of ammunition.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, like, so, because apparently it's one of the most common places to commit suicide at a gun range.
No way.
Yeah, because like entering the mind of someone who wants to commit suicide, they don't want to create problems for their loved ones.
Yeah.
So like they don't want there to be a mess to clean up and all this other stuff. So it's really weird. So that's what I'm saying. If there's an easy way to cleanly commit suicide, I think that you'll see an uptick in people who are actually willing to do it.
Well, see, and there I think is the pushback against it, is that in a sense it's glamorizing suicide, and that it's sort of making that like end of life moment into like a joyous celebration, and maybe it should be, but historically it hasn't been, and we don't know what effect that would have on people. But I think also sort of in this climate, it's not necessarily the best thing to be raising suicide rates when the suicide rates are already ridiculously high and rising in so many places. You don't
Right.
necessarily want to make it something that's acceptable to people who might, be sort of on the fence about it, and could be, a year away from a full recovery and being, a happy, productive person. Having this easy access to something where they can, on a whim, sort of, I guess you have to go through that test, but on a whim, end their life. I don't know that that's necessarily the right way to go. It's an interesting debate, though.
Yeah, and another thing that's from my experience that is ties into this, uh, in the media industry. Again, I don't know if this is still the case. It's not always the case. If the person who commits suicide rises to the level of celebrity.
Mhm.
However, there was a going rule that was put into effect not too long ago that basically news agencies wouldn't cover suicides
Oh, interesting.
because
That's changed.
in a community where a local paper would cover a suicide, that community would see like an uptick of like 20% in suicides after the publication of someone's suicide. So they just basically stopped covering it. So my point is, if you make it kind of like you said, a celebration and very easy to do, people are going to be putting this stuff on like Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that,
Yeah.
which just by the power of suggestion could raise suicide rates tremendously if that carryover effect from the newspaper days are kind of any indication.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, you just don't know what effect it has until it's in the wild, and by then it's too late to sort of pull it back. So it's another one of those things that you have to think about long and hard before you sort of allow this into the wild. Because
Yeah.
you really don't know what effect it's gonna. Speaking of which, our next topic, and this is the real can of worms for this episode. We're going a little bit lower key right after this one. I promise we got some more. We got some. Well, that one's pretty bad too. But anyways, this is probably like the most divisive section of this episode of the live stream, and it's artificial wombs. So just to sort of give a state of the science, they have transplanted a goat fetus. I want to say it was a goat fetus. It might have been a sheep. I think it was a goat, though. A goat fetus that would have been the equivalent of like a 24 to 28 week human fetus into an artificial womb. And an artificial womb is nuts. It looks like a Ziploc bag. It's basically the size of that, with a tube connected to the umbilical cord that I guess feeds blood in through the umbilical cord, keeps a steady stream going through the fetus, and then the bag itself reproduces the conditions of the natural womb, which is basically just like a filtration liquid. So it's basically getting rid of all the stuff that shouldn't be in there, and it successfully grew this goat fetus to a fully healthy adult. It had absolutely no problems. They did it with like 8 or 12 different goat fetuses, and I think euthanized all but one of them to sort of study the organs and see what the state of the organs was, if they were intact or if they were completely malformed or some were missing or anything else, like any sort of mutations or abnormalities. And every single one was perfectly healthy. The one that they didn't euthanize was a perfectly fine goat. There was nothing wrong with it. It sort of lived like a happy little goat life. So I guess the good news up front is here are some stats. So 10% of babies.
That's the best news.
The what?
The goat is happy. That's
the goat is happy is the real happy news from the start. God bless that goat. 10% of babies are born prematurely. I didn't know it was that high, which is nuts. So that's born before they reach 37 weeks of pregnancy, and 6%, so like 30,000 of those births which is extremely premature, happened before the 28th week of pregnancy. And I guess, with the extremely premature babies, you put them in a it's an incubator. Is that what you put?
Right. Yes.
Okay. Uh, and a lot of them had terrible health problems later on down the line because it's super dangerous and gets all sorts of infections. They don't necessarily develop right. A lot of parents, after they do that, feel bad because they basically say, like, I wouldn't put my kid through all this pain and trouble if I knew it was going to be this bad. But if artificial wombs are available to put premature births into, they basically develop like a normal birth and everything is potentially hunky dory, which is awesome news. I mean, that would be incredible, to not have to worry about that anymore. I guess the debate comes around the hot button issue of abortion and how the abortion debate changes when artificial wombs are a reality, which they're going to be sooner rather than later. So, Cody, how does that change the debate?
Yeah, which I've had this argument a number of times where like I don't actually have a horse in the race on the whole abortion thing. I'm able to call it right down the middle. And so the where it largely falls right now, where people on the left largely miss the argument. And again, I'm speaking to a US audience here. I don't know the rules in the rest of the world. So bear with me on that part of it. But basically the what the right tries to do is say that basically very quickly is the termination of a fetus murder. And so basically the left is saying basically like it's not murder, it's not murder till a certain point, and then it becomes murder. Because the reason that the right pushes so hard for that is because once you have this defined as murder, then there is no acceptable use for an abortion. And this isn't my opinion. This is just what I'm saying. Like, if the legal statute says that terminating a fetus is murder, then all the other arguments and kind of extenuating circumstance, incest, rape, uh,
Like a difficult
damage,
birth, or
yeah, right.
the child's going to have like severe disabilities.
Imperils the
Or
mother. Imperils the
yeah,
mother. That's what I was looking for. Imperils the mother. All of those arguments go out the window because none of those are an excuse for murder, right? Like anyone would say, you would argue that it's not murder, but if the law of the land says it's murder, you don't have that argument anymore.
right.
There's no acceptable use for murder or defense for murder in that case. So that's where the right keeps trying to define it as murder. The Supreme Court has kind of taken this middle ground and left it up to the states a little bit, but basically the Supreme Court has said that it's legal to terminate a fetus until the fetus becomes viable outside of the mother's womb. So this is very, again, people are saying you're parsing words, but that's what the legal profession is about, is parsing words. And so with the advent of artificial wombs, the viability of the fetus is immediate upon conception. So then the law of the land as it stands today, without changing it, if it stands today, there would be a very strong case to make abortion completely legal, because immediately upon conception, the fetus becomes viable outside of the mother's womb. So
completely illegal, I think you meant.
Yes, yeah, completely illegal. So you would either have to change the law, or basically every fetus is covered under that statute, that it would be murder because it would be viable outside of the mother's womb.
And to that point, there was an interesting quote from the guy. A guy who's actually doing research on human embryos, not necessarily goat embryos. Here's this quote: "I want to make this very clear. We have no intention, or we've never had any intention with this technology of extending the limits of viability further back." So they went back to like 24 weeks. I think when you do that, you open a whole new can of worms. So he knows that, and somebody will eventually do that. But if you eventually go back and you can prove that a human embryo can survive immediately in an artificial womb, that basically goes to your point of the viability argument goes all the way back just to conception, period. No pun intended. So he actually kept a human embryo alive for 13 days outside of the womb in like an artificial womb. And it could have kept it longer, but there's a limitation on, I guess, embryo research where you have to destroy the embryo after 14 days. So we actually don't know how long it can last. And I assume that a country like China, who has laxer regulations around this stuff, will be the first ones to grow a human embryo inside of an artificial womb and sort of prove the viability of it. No pun intended again.
It's crazy, and that's why again, I'm able to speak very objectively on both sides of this issue, and that's why I keep telling people on the left, like, if you want to protect abortion as it stands today, you need to stop arguing that it's a privacy issue. You need to stop that, because the law is written that it will become murder. And once it becomes murder, it doesn't matter if it's a privacy issue, because murder would override the privacy issue.
Yeah.
It would, as the law stands today. So you either need to start arguing to change the law, right? Start preparing for the law to get the law changed. And again, when I'm offered my advice on that front, basically I say that you need to kind of like change it from like the whole viability thing to more like a citizenship thing. Like the fetus doesn't have the same rights as a citizen, but something. And I'm not a legal scholar at all, but as it stands now, there's going to be a lot of problems for people who are for abortions.
Yeah, I think that's a tough sell there. An interesting argument I've heard is, or I read about, is the idea that you have control over your genes and your genetic lineage, I guess. And if you don't want your genes out there, you have the right to have control of that and terminate a pregnancy to control the spread of your genes, basically. And I don't know how that debate would work out, but one interesting thing that I thought was there's a whole bunch of stuff, a whole bunch of issues around a father's control over the decision to have an abortion. And if that becomes the legal rule that keeps abortion legal, that you want to have control over your genes, what's to stop a father from saying, well, I want my genes to propagate. Let's put the fetus in an artificial embryo. And I don't know that the courts would side with the argument that wants to terminate a pregnancy versus a side that wants to keep it going. So that would be a tricky one. I mean, I guess you get around if both parents decided that they agreed that they want their genes to propagate and they want to terminate the pregnancy. There's gonna be a whole bunch of stuff, even without looking at the gene stuff. With artificial wombs, there's gonna be a whole bunch of cases around a father's right to control a pregnancy, which I don't think the left wants at all, but it's something that they're gonna have to deal with.
Yeah, and always remember that the law is always behind technology. And that's what I keep saying, is that the law as it stands today, at least from my interpretation, would basically immediately abortion would become illegal upon the advent of these artificial wombs becoming viable. I mean, I can tell you right away there would be a challenge from the right day one, when artificial wombs hit the market, kind of thing.
The other argument I heard that I really don't think holds any weight is the argument that the practicality of it, if we had 500,000 extra babies every year, where would they go? Are there enough orphanages to take care of those kids? That's a total non-starter argument for me, because I think if that was the case, there would be money pouring in to take care of those kids.
Right. And again, what I keep saying is, okay, so basically you're saying that we should legalize. And again,
it does go back to your murder case, really.
Right. Because I'm not saying that abortion is murder, but I'm saying by the legal statute as it is today. But with the advent of the artificial wombs, then it's very possible the legal statute would say it's murder. And if that happens, then you can't say murder is okay because we don't want people overflowing orphanages. I mean, because that opens. I mean, if that's your new kind of like override, that if that overrides murder, you're in for a whole other kind of bag of worms,
Yeah.
So that's what I keep saying is the law needs to be adjusted if you're going to try to counteract this technology, because otherwise there's a good chance that overnight terminating a fetus will equal abort or murder at any stage of the pregnancy, in which case you lose hands down once it becomes murder.
Yeah.
You lose hands down.
Yeah. I think the one takeaway is to invest in whatever company is leading the way in birth control, if that ever became the case, because there would be such an uptick in the importance of birth control if either abortion became illegal or folks were forced to use an artificial womb if they wanted to terminate a pregnancy, that they
Right.
would really, really, really be careful. It's a super interesting discussion, super interesting debate. This one's interesting too.
Well, let me say one thing on that, because
Sure, go ahead.
it opens up another bag of worms, which I didn't even think about, where like there's going to be a social discrepancy there too, where some people are going to be able to afford an artificial womb and some people aren't going to be able to afford an artificial womb. But again, and I just go back what the law says today. It doesn't say if you can afford to make the fetus viable. It just says if the fetus can be viable outside of the mother's womb.
Yeah.
So it can be, you just may not be able to afford it. So that creates a whole nother kind of situation where you're going to have theoretically a class of people who can't afford an artificial womb
and are forced to commit a crime, basically.
Yeah, right. Or either forced to commit a crime or forced to put themselves into even worse social economic standing.
And I mean, then it's really come full circle at that point, because that was the case, in the 40s, 50s, and 60s with back alley abortions, and the whole reason that Roe v. Wade became such a major case. So it's going to go all the way back to the beginnings, basically. It's really, I mean, it's crazy to think about. But it's coming. It's coming. I mean, like it's on its way. Artificial wombs are probably, all this stuff, I can't imagine it's more than 10 years away.
Oh,
with the rate of technology and the amount of research being done on it, it's stuff that people really need to think about, because it's going to be here sooner rather than later. The next topic is artificial organs. It's slightly different. Not necessarily artificial wombs outside of the body, but artificial organs inside of the body. So transplants and stuff like that. Here's a great quote, and I'll see if you recognize the movie that this reminded me of immediately. Gardner crystallized things with a downright creepy example. We know the best bioreactor for tissues and organs for humans are human beings, he said. Hypothetically, the best way to get you a new heart would be to clone you, grow up a copy of yourself, and take the heart out. Scientists could probably produce a clone person with the technologies we already have if money and ethics were of no concern, but we don't want to go there, right? He added in the next breath. The ethics involved in doing it are not compatible with who we want to be as a society. So first off, I didn't realize that we could probably clone humans today. It's just that the ethics around it and the money around it don't let us. But second off, does that ring a bell as far as like movie plots go?
I was gonna say The Matrix at first, but now I don't.
So did you ever see The Island?
Dr. Moreau?
No, it's just called The Island. It's an old Michael Bay movie. It's like from 2002,
no,
2003. It had the guy from Green Mile, the guy who died super young, Michael something or other. And it had Obi-Wan Kenobi from the Star Wars prequels, and a young Black Widow. Why can't I remember names today?
Scarlett Johansson.
Scarlett Johansson was in it, and Ewan McGregor. They were the two leads. And the plot of it was, spoilers. I guess this is going to spoil the movie for you. It happens like a third. The reveal is like 30 minutes in, so it's not that big a reveal. But basically, in the future, rich people clone themselves, and these clones are sort of brought up in like a THX 1198 dystopian reality where they're basically just in buildings. They just live there. They get fed. They get taken care of. They hang out. They play games. And then eventually, if the rich person needs an organ transplant, those people are murdered. The organ that the rich person needs is removed. Like they'll just come in and get a new organ right away.
Man, that sounds exactly like a Netflix show that I think I suggested to you that you got to watch. It was 1 season long, and the plot is so similar. It's kind of crazy. Although it's not even for organs, it's for like entire bodies kind of thing.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
like transplant a brain? Because that was another one too. Well, actually, that's a different sci-fi concept. where they transplant a brain into a younger person so they can live again.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
that was a movie with Ben Kingsley and Ryan Reynolds. That was a terrible movie.
So the name,
Michael Clark Duncan, by the way, is the Green Mile guy.
right? I was saying Michael Clark Duncan and Sean Bean was in that too, apparently.
Yeah, he was. He
Okay,
was. I want
but
to say he's like the cop who hunts him down. It's a really cheesy action movie. Worth a watch.
so the thing that I was thinking of is called Altered Carbon, and
Oh, I've heard of that.
I guess they are making another season, but it's been a long time since it came out, and it's pretty cool. Like basically, as long as you can afford it, you never die. Your consciousness is just transferred into another body,
Huh.
and yeah, and actually, like if you're kind of like if you're kind of really wealthy, you can be transferred into a very nice body, and if you're
You get some like dumpster body.
yeah, exactly. So
Oh my gosh.
it's really interesting. Definitely check that out. It's only one season, so it's definitely worth a watch.
We've already gone so long, but there's so much more to talk about. I don't know if you have a hard stop at all.
No,
We probably got like another half hour's worth. Anyways, what they've done is they artificially grew a rat pancreas inside of a mouse. So a mouse was born with a functioning rat pancreas, and it was a perfectly healthy, happy mouse. This is the other good news from this episode. The mouse and the goat are best friends now. They hang out all the time.
They're going to start a Disney movie.
The artificial animals, the artificials. So, anyways, I guess the thought is to grow human organs inside of pigs. And I guess there's research being done around this, but you could basically grow, a liver inside of a pig, or any organ that people need, a kidney. People need kidney transplants all the time. So you grow a kidney inside of a pig and transplant it into a human. It'd be a human kidney inside of a live pig. So here are the like nightmare scenarios. What if like a deadly swine virus transferred into the transplanted kidney or whatever organ it was and kicked off like the Stand, Stephen King's The Stand levels of
Oh man.
like epidemics. So that's one worry. These are all worries that scientists say there's no way that could possibly happen, but I think we've heard that before. What if the human stem cells inserted into pig embryos? So there's the ethical debate too, is around the fact that you have to use stem cells to grow all this stuff. What if somehow by being inserted into a pig, the human stem cells produced a human gamete inside of the pig, and the a pig gamete, the human gamete produced some sort of pig human hybrid that was born? What if that happened? Think about that. Okay, what if human cells incorporated into the animal's brains and humanized their thoughts or behaviors? So you basically had a pig with a human mind who realized that he was a pig and was freaking out.
I actually don't see a downside to any of these scenarios, by the way.
They're all great stories. They're all great, like starts to awesome sci-fi stories.
They're all things that make life more interesting, as far as I'm concerned.
So I guess the big issues are stem cell research, which we kind of talked about, I guess, with the artificial womb stuff, and also animal rights issues. But I don't know that we necessarily want to talk about either of those. So let's move on to the other artificial organs topic, which is, this is right up your alley too, because I know you're on the side of the steroids debate where we should just legalize steroids in professional leagues and let these guys juice themselves to the max.
Sure, yeah.
So what about 3D printing human enhancements? And this actually kind of gets to like Tiger Woods, who had spinal fusion surgery, which basically replaced one of his discs with an artificial disc that's basically like a superpowered disc. Like it made his back superpowered, and it basically led to him winning the Masters. So like I guess the question is, if you could like enhance your body with like NBA players might get like titanium knees so that their knees never gave out, because NBA players have horrible knees. Or any number of like, I guess football players could like have titanium skulls like Wolverine, so that they didn't get what's it called? CPD?
CPAP?
Yeah, so they didn't get that.
They don't night.
So like, what do you think about the fact that we could eventually like superhumanize humans, like make $1 million mans out of everyone.
I'm all for it. 100%. Why not? Like, why not? Again, it makes everything more interesting. I stopped watching baseball. I mean, like, as soon as
Once I stopped juicing.
yeah, I mean, like, why not? Like, why not?
It was
Like,
kind of fun to see a giant Mark McGuire
totally.
annihilate baseballs.
The integrity of the game argument is just nonsense. It's nonsense. Like,
What about the guys who don't want to do it, who could have been like all-time greats, but weren't because they didn't take steroids or they didn't, get titanium shoulders put in?
but to me, that's like saying, like, what about this guy who had so much talent, but he didn't want to work out? Like, okay, you didn't want to work out, so you didn't reach your potential. Like, the things that enter our world that help you reach your potential grows every day, and some people are willing to do that, and some people aren't. So
Isn't it an artificial potential though when you have implants or you need chemicals? Is that like an artificially increased potential?
So again, me being like the kind of practical person, I'm not willing to say like if your arm snaps, you shouldn't have Tommy John surgery. And people are like trying to snap their arms so they can have Tommy John surgery at this
It
point.
does make your arm super strong.
It makes your arm super strong. So like, and I'm not okay saying like you can't take Advil to hide pain. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's an interesting, like, it's a slippery slope argument too, because
right.
at what point is it performance enhancement and what point is it not, I guess.
Right. And I just don't fancy myself as kind of like the cop in that manner where I'm willing to draw a line and say what is and isn't okay. So I'm just like, make it all
Everything's okay.
Yeah, everything's okay. Whatever you want to do, whatever you can try. If it's dangerous, then you won't be in the game very long, kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Guess you could do or I guess they don't do this, but you could have something like a clean league and an anarchy league where anything goes. And I guess if you did that, I imagine most people would tune into the Anarchy League.
Yeah, 100%.
Sons of Anarchy League.
And that's what I mean. It's so hypocritical, these people who say, "Oh, the integrity of the game," and yet they stopped watching baseball after people stopped. It's so hypocritical. So yeah,
it's interesting too. It's interesting in tennis because, like, I guess there's a big debate now in tennis around forcing players to not play a tiebreaker in 5-set matches. I guess they're all up in arms about like players' ability to withstand those long, grueling matches. Like, first off, players have done that for forever. I guess the pace of the game has gotten quicker and maybe the seasons are longer and maybe it's a bit more damaging. Like just the style of the game that's played, how powerful it is, and how much you move. I mean, so maybe there's something to it. But like in tennis, they get in one of those, I don't know what they're called, those chambers that you get in, and not a suicide machine, but they get in those they're like little boxes that have like an artificial environment or something that makes you recover like instantaneously. I'm trying to think what the name of it is. But like, how is that not performance enhancement?
Right. And that's what I'm just not going to be I'm not going to get into an argument where I'm going to sit here and say, this is okay. That's not okay. This is okay. That's not okay. So do whatever you want within the rules of the game. I don't care. Like, I just do not care. Cryotherapy
is what I was trying to think of.
I mean,
everyone used cryotherapy chambers apparently on the ATP tour.
If Ishner Mahout can play for 27 million hours straight at the U.S. Open in
Wimbledon.
Oh, it was Wimbledon, right? I mean, I don't care if you're going into extra sets.
70-68 that fifth set over the span of 3 days.
Yeah,
Cry me a river.
Yeah,
you try and do that. Yeah, I guess I could see that point. It's just weird that you would have to force yourself. I guess if you wanted it bad enough, you would force yourself to do that kind of stuff to your body.
Right.
I mean, I guess there's always a risk to that. There's a risk to, I guess, training super hard.
Yeah, exactly. There totally is. Totally is.
Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. It's always a risk to become like an elite level athlete. You're always putting your body in danger. So what difference does surgery or any sort of like chemical enhancement really add to that? It's interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, exactly. There's always a risk. Always.
Now let's talk about, I mentioned thunderstorms is going to come up. This will be our last topic. I'll just give a token gesture to the last two. But controlling the weather. So this is the most fun fact of all. The scientist who discovered the method to produce rain artificially. So what you do is you pump a whole bunch of silver iodide into the clouds, and I guess how rain forms. This is really interesting too. I didn't know this, but silver iodide, I guess, is a large molecule, and what moisture needs is like a large molecule to bind to, and then it uh, falls down out of rain clouds. If the particles are too small, the rain won't bind to it well enough, so it won't actually produce rain. So silver iodide is an awesome thing to pump into clouds to make it rain, because I guess it's non-toxic once it actually rains down, and it's rain, I guess, binds to it super heavily. It must be super ionized or something like that. But the scientist who discovered this, his name was Dr. Bernard Vonnegut, and he's Kurt Vonnegut's brother.
Is it? No, get out. Get out.
I kid you not.
Wow.
The scientist who discovered how to control weather is Kurt Vonnegut's brother. That was like the most fun fact I've found in a long, long time.
That's crazy. So like there's like a whole sect of hipsters who are rooting for the guy.
Yeah, exactly. But I guess cloud seeding is being used. I had no idea, but cloud seeding, which is what it's called, is being used like all over the world currently. And like China, apparently before the Olympics, they had like missile launchers filled with silver iodide to make sure that it didn't rain for the opening ceremony, and we're ready to just annihilate any cloud that came within like miles of the stadium. So you can actually, I guess, just like bust up rain clouds, or I guess make it rain early with silver iodide so that there's no moisture left when it actually gets to the stadium. But I guess it's happening all over the world. I just had no idea.
It's so weird. I mean, like this falls under the whole what could go wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
What could possibly go wrong? But here's the thing: like I'm just not like, again, if this can stop a hurricane from wiping out Florida, are you gonna do it? Of course you are. Like, of course you are. And then
what if in stopping that hurricane from wiping out Florida, you cause an even bigger hurricane to wipe out Texas? I guess that's a fair trade. I take that trade.
Well,
keep Disney World.
But see, this is the thing. Until you can prove that wiping out Hurricane A creates larger Hurricane B.
Yeah.
Go for it. Go for it.
But I guess like butterfly effect, the complexity of the weather is such that you could never prove that anything caused anything else.
True.
So this debate's going to be tough for people to have. But I guess one issue, and they've done it in I want to say United Arab Emirates did it. It just says the Middle East in my notes. I think it was the UAE. Put up like 100 different silver iodide emitters and produced like they usually get like 0 inches of rainfall in whatever month they set them up, and they got like 50 inches of rainfall after they set them up. But the issue is like you're sucking the moisture out of the atmosphere. It's not going to rain somewhere that it usually rains. It's like, what effect is that going to have on the globe if we just completely change the moisture patterns? Like China is installing like a massive China's the best because they're just like, F it, we're going to do whatever the hell we want and see what happens. Right. But I guess they've set one up on like the mountains of Tibet, and they've got all these silver iodide like launchers or ionizers. I guess like there's something that produces silver iodide ions, and it just shoots them up into the atmosphere. And so the Tibetan plains are getting flooded with water. And I guess the way their system works is that like their ecosystem works is that all that water gets funneled into like the fertile South China lands. So God only knows where that water was supposed to go, but it's going to China now.
Man, that is insane. That is insane. I don't even know. And my other problem with laws is I don't think they're very effective.
Yeah, I don't think China would care much if we outlawed silver iodide.
Right.
Cloud seeding.
And so here's the thing, like, okay, so like you can't get China to agree not to do it. So are we going to let them take all of our rain patterns, or are we going to like, no, we're going
to one up them?
It becomes like an arms race.
It really does, though. Like we're going to suck up all the moisture in the world just to prove China wrong.
Yeah. I mean, you could literally have like a new Cold War where we're building bigger and bigger. Was it iodine cannons?
Silver iodide. Yeah. Like North and South America will just be like water world. We'll be in our boats and be like, told you so, China, in your face.
During the Cold War, you remember it'd be like, well, the Soviet Union has a nuclear bomb that could destroy the world 4 times over. It's
yeah,
like,
right.
The U.S. has one that could destroy the world 80 times over.
Like, what are you accomplishing here?
This argument, we're going to have silver iodide cannons that can suck the moisture out of 10 worlds.
I'm so excited for our future. It's going to be so interesting and silly. The topics that we didn't get to, by the way, artificial pollinators. People are talking about building mechanized bees because bees are dying out. So that's another what could possibly go wrong, an army of like mechanized bees. I was going to go ahead.
I had something actually to add to this, which is most people don't know. And it's because I came into contact at a networking event while I was intoxicated. Someone who's like a mosquito expert. And I was like, you know what? Screw mosquitoes. They're not good for anything. They don't do anything beneficial. And he's like, well, actually, apparently they're responsible for so much more pollination than bees. It's ridiculous.
No way.
Yeah, mosquitoes are huge pollinators. They're huge pollinators.
I'm sorry, mosquitoes. I was on your side. I absolutely despise mosquitoes.
I know. But
apparently they keep our world running. So big ups, mosquitoes.
It's amazing what you learn when you get belligerently drunk.
It's a story of my life. The last thing I was going to mention is artificial diamonds, which is like the one topic I came across that is like a definite, like there's nothing bad about it. Like you stop the danger of diamond mines and like the exploitation of labor. It costs like half as much as actual diamonds. There's no discernible difference between artificial diamonds and natural diamonds. There's nothing wrong with artificial diamonds. So that's the point I'm going to end it on. Like I want to end on a happy note, right? Because we talked about a lot of heavy stuff here. So
artificial diamonds. The
2 thumbs up.
Yeah, I mean, I know you don't like technology, but that is like just one great aspect of technology. I mean, that is amazing.
Yeah, that is great. And that is where we're going to end this extremely long episode of the Gunner Technology Livestream. We went over an hour. There's so much to talk about, though. But that's going to do it for this week's episode. Make sure to tune in at our new time. I don't know if I'm super choppy on your computer. Am I just choppy on mine?
You were choppy for in and out for a little bit.
Okay. We have a new date and time. Not new time. New date. Same bat time, different bat date. Wednesday at 1:00 is going to be the next episode. And future episodes of the Gunner Technology Livestream. So make sure to tune in next Wednesday for the next episode. You can check out the blog post for this episode at gunnertech.com. The podcast will be on iTunes. Make sure to check out our ebooks on Amazon, iBooks, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, and anywhere else ebooks are sold. Hop on our Facebook page and enter the Country Shore giveaway. Country Shore is a lifestyle brand for anyone who loves the outdoors. You can visit them at countryshoreoutfitters.com. And our question of the week, make sure to hop on our Facebook page and answer that, which next week is companion robots. I think that's what they're called. Companion robots for the elderly, yay or nay. So let us know what you think about that. And make sure to tune in next Wednesday when we talk about all sorts of other artificial stuff like androids and virtual girlfriends, companion robots.
So right
all that kind of stuff. So make sure to tune in next Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern time for the next episode of the Gunner Technology Live Stream. I'm Derry. That's Cody. We'll see you next week.